Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And in this one, we're going to be breaking down all of the specializations related to the first season of Midnight and their viability and expected performance for 2 versus 2 arena. So if you've got a buddy that you want to pick up, or you just like the kind of 2 versus 2 gameplay, these are the specializations that I think are going to be performing at the highest level and going to be able to deliver you some massive results. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. But let's get started here. And unfortunately, on every tier list, whenever I reset this, Affliction Lock is the first spec that I have to rank. And in 2v2, I do think Drain Life build could potentially make you more competitive. Also, the fact that you don't need to manage dots on 3 targets, only 2, so the global intensity is going to go down a little bit. I think that it might help it, but at the same time, there's a lot of melee DPS like Windwalker monks that are very powerful at the moment, and I think you will struggle with those. So it's going to be very rock, paper, scissors. If you're queuing into like Ret Paladin Healer, you could probably do really well in those types of situations, but if you're queuing into Rogue or you're queuing into Windwalker or Unholy DK, which are likely going to be very prevalent, I think it's going to be a bit tough. So I think right now the best I could do is C tier. You're probably going to want to play with Arresto Druid, which is going to give you a lot of stuns in cat form and maybe a little bit of the burst damage that you're missing as an Affliction Warlock if you're really going to try and do something on Warlock. Maybe there's some weird double DPS universe where you could play something, but I just feel like you just don't have the burst. You might have better sustain than a lot of DPS, but just don't have the burst for double DPS. That's kind of where I'm seeing Affliction at the moment. Arcane Mage, I think Mage is going to struggle because I think Hunter is going to be really good. And Hunter is all 3 specs of it, I think, are really good in 2v2. And I think you might struggle a bit with any sort of DPS Shaman stuff if anyone's running like cheesy like Ellie Shaman healer builds, which come out every now and then because usually these counter the melee DPS, which you likely will do really well into. You'll be like great into the Windwalker healer teams and great into the warrior ones and likely great into the Death Knight ones as well because Arcane does some pretty good AoE damage. So I don't think it'll be, the peak of the peak. I'm going to put it on B tier, but I could see it on A tier. I'll put it on B tier for now. I think, again, it can be disrupted a little bit more. It's kind of more matchup dependent, but can probably win more often than Affliction. But I think it will likely struggle with Hunters, and that's the main reason why I'm pulling it down a bit from A to B. Now, obviously, with Arcane, you're probably going to want to play with Arresto Druid again. I think Arresto Druid or Mistweaver or Disc Priest, these are going to be like the strong go-to healers. They're going to give you extra damage and extra control as well in a lot of situations. And mostly the stuns from Druid are the main advantage as a caster. That's why I'm saying Druid over Mistweaver in 2v2. Just with these spellcasters specifically. Arms Warrior, I'm sorry, guys. It's just you guys are going to get kited by all of these ranged. You might do well into Death Knights, and depending on how popular Death Knights are, you could do well there. But I think it's going to be a lot of Hunter spamming Concussive Shot on you, and you're just not moving. And then obviously a couple of Mages as well, which is going to be tough. So I think it's going to be really lobby dependent. Arms is 100% going to want to play with like a Mistweaver monk, playing Fistweaver build, and kind of getting in there with in caps and trying to add as much damage as possible if it was going to pull something off. But I think it'll probably be one of the worst performing specializations for 2v2. But you're pretty much the bottom of every tier list for all content. So I mean, you're probably going to get buffed, and I will update this tier list moving into the future should those buffs come through, and I'll relay those buffs to you in real time as they happen so you don't miss them for even a moment. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. But right now I'm kind of feeling Arms Warrior towards the bottom. Assassination Rogue, main issue right now across the whole game is that you just hit a point where you run out of energy and you can't really do anything. Before that point, you feel pretty decent, but you do lack control relative to Subtlety. I think Subtlety Rogues, the 16-second DR is just so good for Subtlety compared to any other spec in the game, and it's even worse for you because they removed the 3DR of Garrote, which was the main advantage here. I don't think it's completely awful in 2v2 though. I think it could get like some decent amount of work done with burst damage on Kingsbane and Deathmark, and it could do okay. I'm going to give it a bit of a higher ranking when it comes to 2v2 in that regard. But I do think if you run out of steam, might struggle with mobility against Hunters, similar to Warrior. But I think the damage is threatening enough here that if you played with like a Discipline Priest or something like that, you might be able to hammer down a lot of damage, that it could do well. Augmentation, I'm going to assume is going to be very low, mostly just because it doesn't do a lot of damage as a standalone spec, and it focuses more on buffing other classes at the moment, and there's not a lot of people to buff, and there's only 2 people. So I think Og will likely underperform here, and it's not like it's tanky enough they could run double DPS with like Og and like some melee or something like that. I don't think it's tanky enough to be able to outlast and do that. Now the tank specs in 2v2. See, the tank specs are overrunning world PvP. They're overrunning skirmishes and like battlegrounds where there's usually not any healers because they can beat pretty much any DPS one-on-one. But I think when you introduce like a healer and a DPS, like you'll be super annoying. Everybody will hate you, but I don't know if you'd 100% win. So like I'm gonna put you here. Like Blood DK, Guardian Druid might be higher, but in 2v2 I don't know. I just feel like it's gonna be a little bit weaker when people are more coordinated, equal geared, and with healers. You will counter every double DPS if you played like Guardian Druid. And maybe there's some tank DPS comps, you know, like Guardian Druid Ret Paladin or Guardian Druid Rogue or something like that. Maybe. It'd be kind of maybe. I don't really see it beating the healer DPS roles. So that's why the tanks are coming in a bit lower on this list. Beast Mastery Hunter. Some people are saying Dark Ranger is really good on it. I don't really see it. I think that it'll be solid in 2v2. BM Hunter is just always really good in 2v2. I'm going to put it on A tier, but I'm going to reserve it from S tier. I think damage is a little bit lower on the lower side at the moment, but it should likely do really well into a lot of these melee that it can kite, like Windwalker, which I think is going to be taking over. And I also think Freezing Trap will be really effective into Mistweaver Monks, which are likely going to be very prevalent. So Hunter could be doing really well in this bracket, but I think the other Hunter specs might do a little bit better. Brewmaster Monk, it's the same deal. Like you could do it. If you were going to do it, I would do not play tank healer, please. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see it. If you do try and do it, it's got to be like tank plus a DPS. And again, it's going to be tank plus like a really durable Mortal Strike melee DPS is probably the formula that you're going to want to go for. Feral Druid, I actually do think is going to be good in twos. I think it's got a decent amount of damage coming through. It's going to have great support with like a Discipline Priest. That's been like one of the standard comps. Or potentially a Mistweaver just because Fistweaver does so much damage, obviously. Probably going to want to avoid double Druid. But I think Feral Druid could actually do well in twos. I don't know about double DPS. Again, the hybrid healing is better. The healer damage is so much higher that I don't think it's going to compensate for it, right? Like they buffed hybrid healing a lot. Now healers do more damage, so it's like that basically equaled that out, and now you can't really run a lot of double DPS options. Boomkin's not really a great 2v2 spec, and honestly, Boomkin usually needs like Resto Shaman to be good to do well. In the long term, Resto Shaman is not very good right now. You could probably play Discipline Priest Boomkin, but it'll be very like counter compy as far as your viability in 2v2. So I think I'm going to come more onto the mid tier here. Also, just not having Mortal Strikes, so it's a little bit slower. Not having a lot of stuns, it's a little bit slower. You just be a dampener in twos. You just run away with a healer that does damage and try and live, and basically that's your game plan there. Similar to Affliction, but you're probably a bit better than Affliction. Devourer or Demon Hunter. This one, Devour Demon Hunter is ending up at a place where it's just really predictable. You know that it's ramping up, and when it's in meta, you know it's going to do something big. And if you know that, you'll counter it, and it'll feel much weaker than otherwise. And it doesn't have Mortal Strike, so playing this with a healer is like playing a caster and a healer. And I feel like that's going to be tough. And Rogue is going to be really popular, especially Subtlety, and it just completely hard counters you. And I think like Mark's Hunter can completely blast you. So I wouldn't imagine Devour is going to be too amazing. I think B tier, because it does have good burst, and at lower ratings you'd probably be able to, most of these specs you can play at lower rating, like if you're just trying to go for 1800. Some of them though on the bottom here might be significantly harder, but as you get towards the top of the ladder, I think a lot of these specs in the B tier you'll start to notice their weaknesses a lot more. Demonology Warlock I think would be really good with like a Druid or something, or Fistweaver or Disc. Those are kind of like the three primary healers I'm thinking at the moment. I don't know about Holy Paladin. Just doesn't have the same type of sustained damage, but it's probably okay. But Demo has so much CC that you can just like lock out a player completely, and it does so much damage at the moment that I think it will be really good here. Destruction Warlock, again, you probably play with the Resto Druid, just Spellcaster, Resto Druid, because it has a lot of stuns, can add some burst damage. Destruction Warlock might be one of the better ranged as far as spellcasters to play in the 2v2 bracket, because it's got multiple schools of magic, so it can always do damage. It's got good setup. You can run Succubus Cheese as well in some situations. So I could see Destro actually doing pretty decently, but I think Demo having Mortal Strike on top of the CC, on top of how much damage, that it'll probably be one of the top performers. Devastation Evoker is honestly a tough one, because I feel like I never see it. It's kind of a spec in 2v2 where you basically hard counter all the melee because you just hover and fly away with snares and no one can ever touch you. But I don't know how well it'll do into the casters. But at the same time, casters like Affliction that I think could be difficult for it are not really good right now. So this really depends on tuning. I'm thinking that Devastation will probably at least be A tier, but could be S tier. I'll put it on A tier for now. But it could be S tier depending on, well, actually at the same time you struggle a lot with Subtlety Rogue, so maybe not. And I could see Demo just like spam crowd controlling you and taking you out a lot. So maybe A tier is actually fair for it. Healers are going to be tough. I'm going to leave Disc for a little bit later because the healer balance in 2v2 gets a little bit weird. Ellie Shaman, I think with the damage output, it's not going to be too spectacular. Again, Ellie Shaman, Resto Druid, double caster, Resto Druid is kind of the go there. You'll have some matchups that are good. Ellie Boomkin and Arcane can do better when Warrior's really good because you guys counter Warrior. But so if the thing you counter is bad and the thing that counters you is good, that's going to put you in like at best a mid position, if not so good of a position. Honestly, maybe it would be down here even for 2v2 right now. I'm a bit. I'll put it down here. I think the control and consistent lethality of these guys is a bit better than Elemental. Enhancement Shaman. This is one where again you wish your healing was just a little bit higher. They buffed the hybrid healing, but like I said, they buffed the healer damage, so that just equaled it out, and you're in the same spot as far as effectiveness. Although enhancement seems okay with Ascendance builds and bringing Stormbringer into the mix. If you brought in like a Fistweaver or maybe a Subtlety Rogue even, maybe you could try a double DPS comp here on Enhance. Maybe this is too high of a ranking though. I feel like it might be too high of a ranking for 2s. Enhance is usually good in 2s when it has enough healing that it can play with a DPS. That's usually when it's good in 2s. If you have to play Enhance plus Healer, it's not going to be very good because you don't have Mortal Strike. So I think C tier is probably a better spot for it. Frost Death Knight, surprisingly very lethal at the moment with the I think it's Reaper's Mark builds that I'm seeing pop up, and I've been seeing it getting a lot of damage. So I feel like this one might be more underrated. I'm gonna leave it in the B tier. It's a bit easier to get someone stacked up when there's only 2 players. Also, it depends on how well it does it in Mistweavers, if it can like KO them or not in combos, because you're going to see like a lot of Mistweaver melee, I think, or Mistweaver Hunter. So if you can stack them and kind of KO them, it can be good. Might struggle if there's a lot of Hunters, though, and I think there likely will be. So I think B tier is probably fair for right now. Fire Mage is super tough because Fire Mage across the rest of the game is insanely good. You just mow people down with Combustion, and you're decently tanky. With the barrier buff that they got recently. I do think it will struggle with Hunters, though. So I don't know if 2v2 will be your bracket. Rogue Mage, probably very fun to play at like 1800 rating and lower. I think as you get higher, it's going to likely get very, a lot weaker. Kind of depends on the prevalence of Monk. Could do well into Monk teams. I feel like this is probably a safer spot to put it, just because I think the Hunters will be tough for you as a Mage in this bracket, and this is like the same thing with Frost. Frost will do really well in the melee, though. It'll be like an Omega hard counter to those melees, getting big Snowdrift stun combos on them. Might struggle a bit, though, with the Hunters. So main reason I'm putting Mage on A tier for the 2v2 is I think Hunters will be kind of your tough nut to crack. We got Fury Warrior. I think Fury Warrior is better than Arms. It does just significantly more damage. It's kind of the trade. Like Arms is squishy, no mobility, and not very threatening even when you get uptime. So Fury Warrior is threatening when you get uptime. Still a bit hard to get uptime. Defense is kind of a little bit shaky, but the Mortal Strike stacking effect can carry it in 2v2. So I think it's got to be at least B tier. But again, with the Hunters and Dev Evokers as good as they are and the new Warlock mobility that they have, it might be a bit tough beyond that point. Havoc Demon Hunter, I just don't see it. Again, like it's got good mobility though, but not really good burst, kind of just average sustain. It's just not really threatening at the moment. So I really don't see it getting a lot of momentum. Wouldn't be able to do any double DPS stuff. I think that would make it viable. It's going to be a tough ride here. You're not alone, Warriors, down here for this bracket. You guys are not alone. Honestly, you might even be a bit better than Havoc in 2v2. Holy Priest doesn't have the same type of sustain, has more burst kind of punch. So again, like you'd probably want to pair up with casters so you can be the stun and you can add in burst damage with the instant damage if you were going to play Holy Priest in 2s. But I kind of think it'll be more mid. I think Holy Priest really excels in 3s or palms bouncing between 3 targets on a lot of cleave damage. So in 2s, it'll be more like a stun cannon spec. Although the healing circle on the ground that you can get with PP talent makes you immune to kicks could be good in this bracket. Putting that down underneath a Mage or something like that, or Destro Lock, could actually be very terrifying for a lot of setups. And it has decent crowd control avoidance. for like traps with Holy Ward and stuff like that. So it might do well into the Hunter team. So Holy Priest, maybe I should put it a little higher. We'll kind of see. Holy Paladin, I'm expecting kind of just A tier, just because it does really good damage with Hammer of Wrath at the moment. And playing the Avenging Crusader build, I think a 2s is going to be the go-to there. So you can run people down as like Pally Windwalker or Pally Hunter or something like that. And it can interchange as well for the mages because it has a stun. I think Druid might be a bit better here, which is weird to say, right? Because I think Druid is kind of underperforming in every other bracket. But Druid, when it comes to 2s, doesn't have to maintain hots, on switching targets, which makes it much better. You can just kind of keep life on one guy, and if you don't switch it, you're not as bad as in other brackets. Marksmanship Hunter, I think, is going to be really nasty. I think the concussive shot snare is going to be really nasty in 2s. So if you pair up with like a Druid again, maybe a Holy Priest, get something with a stun. Maybe Fistweaver. I think Fistweaver could be a bit shakier as a marksman, but I might put this on S tier. Maybe I kind of regret this. Maybe I'll move this guy around, but for right now, I think I'll leave it on S tier. I feel like maybe it could be here. I just feel like the concussive shot is so good on it. Mistweaver, I feel like this has just got to go up here because it just does so much throughput, great mana efficiency. May struggle with mages. That's the only thing I could see. Getting like kited out and dampened and then sheeped and then KO'd might struggle, but the hunters might keep them in check. And given their viability, it could give you a lot more freedom and versatility. Outlaw Rogue, I think, is actually not that bad. It's not a subtlety rogue though, but I could see Outlaw Rogue actually doing pretty good in this bracket. Maybe this is too high. Is it too high? Maybe it's too high. I think it's still decently durable. It can get good uptime even on some of these specs that other melee might have a harder time actually getting uptime on. It's got the stuns, it's got Mortal Strike, it's got everything that you would think it would be able to do this. But I think the only thing is like it doesn't have a lot of burst is the concern that I have for it. Maybe that's the one thing that would make me want to put it down to B tier. I think maybe we'll put it on B tier. Just the lack of burst, I think, is the main reason. Preservation Evoker, it's kind of tough because like you get really close to the fight and these rogues are going to munch you. Mages are going to munch you. You might do okay into the hunters though with the Verdant Embrace, Crowd Control, Nullifying Shroud. You could get like a lot of clutch CC immunities there, so you might do decent into the hunters. But I just don't see it. A lot of other guys are really liking their Pres Evoker though, but for some reason I just don't see it. Maybe I'm just being a hater on it, but like I feel like the best I could do is like B tier. I kind of want to put it on C tier, but I think the best I could do is B tier. Prot Warrior, I think this guy is doing the least DPS of all the tanks, so you'd probably not want to go for it in 2s. If you are going to play Prot Pally, I think you'd want to play with a DPS. Like Prot Pally Sub Rogue might randomly actually be very good because you actually heal for a significant amount. Or maybe Prot Pally Enhanced Shaman even. But I feel like Holy Pally can do competitive damage with you. It is probably one of the better tanks. I'll put it on B tier. If you were going to try and run some sort of tank thing, it would probably be one of these 3 tanks. Resto Druid, this might come as a surprise, but I actually think it's S tier in 2s. Mostly just because you can keep life bloom on one guy without too much worry of constantly switching it, which is where you fall behind as a Druid, and you have more time to do cat stuff because you only have to heal one guy most of the time. And being able to do cat stuff and have time to do it actually makes you a bit more competitive, even despite the lower throughput. Retribution Paladin, this is a tough one. I feel like you have some hard counters when it comes to 2s, especially if you play with a healer. Like if you're going to do Fistweaver or Discret, I could see Discret being really good. Between like the stun fear and the extra damage the disc gives to you with no Mortal Strike, that might push you over the edge in terms of viability. But I'm kind of thinking you're probably A tier in 2s. I think you're going to get kited out a lot of the times against a lot of these other specs, and it might be difficult. You might have some viability with double DPS, like Rogue Ret, maybe, because you can keep the game going a bit with Bubble and Magic Pop and Lay on Hands, but after that, the faster dampening is going to really eat into your Word of Glory healing. Restoration Shaman, I really don't see this one working. It's just really bad throughput, not a lot of damage. I think it would be very hard to pull off at the moment. Shadow Priest with Siphene can be decent. Shadow Priest might, I actually was thinking about trying like Warlock Shadow Priest comp. Sometimes that actually works in 2s, I've noticed over a couple of seasons. And you have a decent amount of healing, then maybe you could, and Warlock could be tanky. Like you could try and give Shadow Priest Demo a go. in twos, or maybe even Shadow Priest Affliction, but that might get a little more sketchy. I think Shadow Healer could still be pretty good as well. I think Shadow is probably like one of the more A tier picks, just because its durability and its siphoning threat. But losing the stun also, you're going to have to play with like a Druid, I think, to have enough stuns to be able to do anything. But somewhere in the A tier, I think it's going to be fair for this. Subtlety Rogue, obviously, going up into the S tier, just really good. I think with a Mistweaver, like that's going to be a comp that just absolutely munches, just locking down people down. Decently durable, great support between them. Just mostly just the throughput on them alone, I think, is going to be really good. Or even Subtlety Rogue Disc Priest. Survival Hunter, maybe this comes as a surprise, but I could see this guy doing really well too in twos. He usually does. So like Survival Disc, something like that, I think is going to be a lot of damage. It has a huge amount of burst at the moment. So Survival Hunter doing really good in the twos bracket. Unholy DK, I think also doing really good in the twos bracket. Just high overall sustain. Chains of Ice for kiting a lot of these melee guys could be very annoying for them as far as getting uptime and a lot of disruption for them. Vengeance, probably going to want to avoid. I just feel like it doesn't have the damage really to offer any sort of viability here in this bracket. Windwalker Monk, I think, is also an S tier spec for twos. It's going to just do a lot of damage. It's great support. Again, like a Disc Priest, I think, or maybe a Resto Druid, in case you need the stuns here, because you do lack the stuns relative to this guy. But I think Windwalker is pretty gnarly in 2v2. And then finally, we got Disc Priest, which is like, this is like the hardest one. I think I'm going to put Disc Priest on S tier. I feel like it's going to be mostly these three guys, whether it's from stuns, overall throughput. I think Paladin can be a bit more of a liability as well and get attacked by a lot of things. So it's a little bit weaker in twos, and then Druid. This is like the big surprise factor between 2v2 and the other brackets, is I think Druid is going to be a bit better here than Paladin would be for the other brackets. And that's basically the breakdown for 2v2, kind of my anticipation for what to expect for this bracket on day number 1. And this is assuming, no changes. If they wait for the week and then do changes, and then we'll go from there and update this. But this is kind of my anticipation of what it's going to look like. So thank you guys very much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. It's helped you think about like what kind of comp you can play with your spec, or maybe if you should consider switching your spec. At the end of the day, I think you can get 1800 on all of these specs. Some of them might, to lower end might be a bit harder to do it. And then when you're playing at rank 1 level, that's where things start to matter a lot more as far as, avoiding the middle bottom. So it really depends on what your goals are as far as like, oh no, I can't play that, he put it on D. Well, it depends what your goal is. Because I think you could get like the 1800 on Havoc, for example. But thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.